The wind howled like a wild animal outside Martha's little cabin, rattling the wooden shutters and sending icy gusts through the thin cracks in the walls. She had lived alone for years, ever since her husband had passed, and the solitude had become both a comfort and a companion. Tonight, however, the snowstorm felt more hostile than usual, the flakes whipping sideways as though determined to bury the world beneath a white tomb. Martha was just about to settle by the fire with her knitting when a soft, urgent knock echoed through the cabin. She hesitated, heart thudding. Visitors were rare in this remote stretch of the mountains, especially in the middle of a blizzard. Still, a woman's desperate voice called out, weak but persistent, "Please, help us." Throwing on her shawl, Martha opened the door to reveal a striking scene. An Apache man, tall and strong, supported a shivering white woman, her cheeks streaked with frostbite and her hair matted with snow. The man's dark eyes met hers, and for a moment, Martha saw the weariness, the fear, and the quiet determination in that gaze. Without a word, she stepped aside, letting them enter. "Warmth," Martha murmured, pulling blankets from a nearby chair. She guided the woman, whose name she learned was Emily, to the fire while the man Tayan shook the snow from his coat. Martha busied herself with food, bringing bowls of steaming stew. The cabin smelled of wood smoke and broth, a fragile warmth against the raging storm outside. As they ate, Martha noticed the way Tayan watched Emily, not with mere concern, but with a tenderness she hadn't expected from a warrior. Emily's eyes lingered on him as well, shy, grateful, and something more profound: admiration, maybe even love. Their glances met and lingered, unspoken words floating between them. Martha, though quiet and reserved herself, understood instantly. She had seen love in her life, both the gentle beginnings and the aching ends, and she recognized it in their gestures, the slight touch of a hand on a shoulder, the protective stance that Tayan assumed when Emily reached for something. The storm worsened, howling against the walls with a ferocity that made the cabin seem simultaneously cozy and fragile. Emily shivered despite the blankets, and Tayan moved closer, offering his warmth without hesitation. Martha watched them from her rocking chair, pretending to busy herself with the knitting she had set aside, but her eyes kept returning to the pair. Their connection was subtle but unmistakable, growing stronger with every shared glance, every quiet word, every fleeting smile. Over the hours, stories were exchanged. Emily spoke of being chased from her home, of the snowstorm that had trapped her in the wilderness, and of the fear she felt when she thought she would not survive the night. Tayan said little of his past, but his presence conveyed loyalty and courage. Martha felt a pang of nostalgia. She remembered the intensity of young love, the silent language that grew between hearts and the quiet moments. By the time the storm reached its peak, the cabin had become a world apart from the frozen chaos outside. The three of them sat near the fire, the flames flickering across their faces. Martha saw the moment, small yet monumental, when Tayan brushed a strand of snow-laden hair from Emily's face, and she caught the soft exhale she imagined Emily had been holding in anticipation. That single act said what neither dared to speak aloud: trust, gratitude, and love. Outside, the snowstorm raged, but inside, warmth prevailed, not just of fire, but of hearts opening, of feelings acknowledged in silence. Martha, witnessing this fragile bloom of love, felt a quiet joy swell in her chest. She knew, without a doubt, that by morning, when the storm finally eased, these two would leave changed, bound together by the trials of the night and the shelter of her hearth. Morning came slowly, filtered through the thick layer of snow that clung to the windows. The storm had finally begun to relent, leaving the world outside muffled and silent, as if the mountains themselves were holding their breath. Inside Martha's cabin, the air was warm and rich with the lingering aroma of last night's stew. But there was something more: a charged, delicate energy between Tayan and Emily that hadn't been there before. Martha busied herself tidying up, pretending not to notice the subtle changes. Emily sat by the fire, pulling the blankets tighter around her shoulders, but her eyes kept darting toward Tayan. In turn, leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching her with a mixture of caution and longing. The cabin felt too small for the storm outside and yet perfect for the intimacy brewing within. Finally, Tayan broke the silence. "Emily." His voice was low, steady, almost hesitant. "We've been running for so long, but last night I realized something." He paused, studying her face, the firelight dancing in her wide, searching eyes. "I can't imagine going forward without you by my side." Emily's breath caught. She had tried to hide it, tried to tell herself she could survive alone, but hearing the truth spoken aloud left her trembling. "I feel the same," she whispered, voice barely audible. "I've felt it since you carried me through the snow. Since the moment you didn't let me face the storm alone." Martha, pretending to adjust a kettle on the stove, allowed herself a quiet smile. She had seen many things in her long life, but witnessing love grow so suddenly, so fiercely, in the face of danger was a rare gift. She stayed silent, letting the moment between them stretch, knowing that the walls of her cabin had become a sanctuary not just from the storm, but for their hearts as well. Tayan stepped closer, and Emily rose, both of them hesitant, as if afraid that acknowledging their feelings fully might shatter the fragile bubble of safety. Yet the storm outside had forged something undeniable between them: trust, gratitude, and a warmth that had nothing to do with fire. Their hands met, fingers intertwining naturally, and for the first time, they allowed themselves to truly feel the connection that had been simmering beneath every glance, every careful gesture. Martha cleared her throat lightly, drawing their attention. "If I may," she said softly, "love often finds you in the strangest places. Sometimes it takes a storm to show you where you belong." Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of experience, a gentle nudge that gave them permission to let go of hesitation. Emily smiled at her, a mixture of gratitude and relief in her expression. "Thank you," she said. "For everything." Tayan nodded, eyes never leaving hers. "We wouldn't have made it without you, and I think we might owe this cabin more than just our thanks." They laughed softly, a sound that mingled with the crackling of the fire and the dripping snow from the eaves outside. The tension that had shadowed them all night began to dissolve, replaced by a new rhythm, the easy closeness of two hearts finally acknowledging their truth. Martha, satisfied, returned to her rocking chair. She watched them as they stood together, hands still intertwined, and she realized something profound. The storm had brought them here, yes, but it was the quiet courage, the small acts of care, and the moments of vulnerability that had truly bound them. She felt a swell of hope for them and a spark of joy in knowing that her little cabin had played its part. The snow began to ease, sunlight glinting off its fresh surface. Tayan and Emily stepped toward the door, pausing to take one last look back. Martha waved, her heart full, knowing that outside, the world was harsh and cold, but together they had found something that could withstand any storm. The snow had finally begun to melt into a gentle drizzle, softening the harsh edges of the mountains and revealing paths that had been hidden for days. Tayan and Emily stepped cautiously out of Martha's cabin, the cold air biting at their cheeks, but nothing compared to the storm they had survived together. Their hands remained intertwined, fingers laced tightly as if afraid to let go, not of each other, and not of the fragile warmth they had found inside the cabin. Martha stood at the door, watching them with a mix of pride and melancholy. She had grown fond of these two in the short span of time they had been under her roof. There was something comforting about witnessing love form in its most genuine state, quiet, patient, and enduring. "Be careful," she called softly, her voice carrying over the thawing snow. "And remember, trust each other, no matter what lies ahead." Tayan nodded solemnly. "We will," he promised, his dark eyes meeting hers with a depth of sincerity that made Martha's chest ache in a familiar, bittersweet way. Emily gave a small, grateful wave, her face flushed with both cold and happiness. Then, without another word, they turned and began to walk down the snowy trail, their steps careful but confident, their presence together a silent proclamation of the bond that had formed overnight. The world outside was still harsh, with snowdrifts lining the path and frozen streams to navigate, but for the first time, neither Tayan nor Emily felt truly alone. The storm had tested them, pushed them to the brink of fear and exhaustion, but it had also given them something more valuable, an unspoken promise to protect and cherish each other. Emily leaned closer to Tayan, resting her head briefly against his shoulder, and he responded by tightening his grip around her hand. As they traveled, conversation flowed more freely than it had inside the cabin. Emily laughed quietly at Tayan's stories of the lands he had crossed, of the people he had met, and of the skills he had learned from his tribe. Tayan, in turn, listened with rapt attention as Emily spoke of her life before the chase, her hopes, her fears, and the dreams she hadn't dared to share with anyone until now. Each word, each glance, deepened the connection that had begun during the snowstorm, proving that love was not just about proximity but about understanding, trust, and shared experiences. By midday, they reached a ridge overlooking a valley that stretched beyond sight. The snow had receded in places, revealing patches of earth and green shoots braving the late winter chill. Emily paused, her eyes wide, drinking in the vast beauty of the world. Tayan stood beside her, his expression quiet but proud, and together they gazed at the landscape, recognizing that the journey ahead would be long and uncertain, but that they would face it together. Martha's cabin faded into the distance behind them, a sanctuary of warmth, safety, and witness to their budding love. Yet, it would remain forever etched in their hearts, the place where they had first realized the depth of their feelings, where fear had turned into trust, and where fleeting warmth had blossomed into enduring love. As the sun finally broke through the clouds, casting golden light across the snow and mountains, Emily whispered, "I don't know what lies ahead, but I know I want to face it with you." Tayan smiled, his hand brushing a strand of hair from her face. "And I with you," he replied. "No storm, no shadow can change that." Side by side, they stepped forward, leaving the remnants of the snowstorm behind but carrying with them the fire that had begun in Martha's cabin, a fire of love, courage, and hope that would guide them through whatever the world had in store. The valley stretched out before Tayan and Emily, its snow-dusted peaks shimmering in the morning sun. For a moment, it seemed peaceful, almost deceivingly so. But as they descended the ridge, the remnants of the storm made the path treacherous. Hidden ice patches, weak snow bridges over streams, and fallen trees created obstacles that tested their balance and patience. Every step required caution. Every movement demanded trust in one another. Tayan led with steady confidence, scanning the terrain for dangers while Emily followed closely, her trust in him absolute. "Careful here," he warned, stopping at a narrow ledge. The wind, though gentler than the storm, still whistled sharply, and the icy edge made Emily's heart pound. She glanced down at the drop below and instinctively reached for Tayan. He offered his arm without hesitation, guiding her across the narrow path. "You've saved me once already," Emily said quietly, her voice trembling from the adrenaline. "I feel safe with you." Tayan smiled faintly, but there was seriousness in his gaze. "And I will continue to keep you safe, no matter what comes," he said. "But you must also trust yourself and your own strength." Their first real challenge came sooner than expected. A thin layer of ice concealed a small stream, and as Emily stepped forward, her foot slipped. Tayan reacted instantly, grabbing her wrist and pulling her to solid ground. Emily's eyes widened, and she pressed her forehead against his shoulder. I don't know what I'd do without you," she whispered. "You'll never have to find out," Tayan replied softly, resting his forehead against hers. For a heartbeat, the world around them vanished, leaving only the warmth of their shared presence amidst the frozen wilderness. Hours passed, each step a small test of their courage and teamwork. Emily began to rely not just on Tayan's guidance, but on her own instincts. She learned to read the snow's texture, to anticipate hidden obstacles, and to pace herself. Tayan noticed her growing confidence and felt a swell of pride, not just for her survival skills, but for her spirit. By late afternoon, they reached the edge of a dense forest, the trees heavy with snow. The canopy blocked most of the fading sunlight, casting long shadows that made navigation difficult. Tayan paused and listened. A distant cracking sound echoed through the woods, followed by rustling branches. His hand went instinctively to his weapon, eyes scanning for danger. Emily stepped closer, her trust in him unwavering, yet a spark of determination lit in her eyes. "We face it together," she said firmly. "Whatever it is, we face it as one." Tayan nodded, and together they advanced cautiously. The rustling grew louder, revealing a pack of wolves drawn by the scent of their passage. Emily's heart raced, but Tayan remained calm. He instructed her to stay close, keep low, and move silently. Together, they navigated the forest edge, slipping between trees and rocks until the wolves lost interest and moved on. When the danger passed, Emily exhaled deeply, relief flooding her body. "I can't believe we made it," she said, her voice shaky but exhilarated. Tayan on her shoulder. "You were brave," he said, his tone full of admiration. "And strong. I'm proud of you." They continued on, the bond between them deepened not only by shared warmth and love, but by shared trials. Each challenge, each moment of fear, became a thread weaving their hearts closer together. Emily realized that love wasn't just tenderness in the firelight, it was trust in the face of danger, courage when the world threatened to pull them apart, and the unspoken promise that neither would ever leave the other behind. As night began to fall, they found a small clearing to rest. Tayan built a fire, and Emily, now confident in her own abilities, helped gather kindling. The day had tested them, yet it had also revealed the resilience of their bond. Huddled together by the fire, warm and safe for the first time since leaving the cabin, they silently acknowledged the depth of their love, a love forged in storm, strengthened by trial, and ready to face whatever lay ahead. The forest seemed calm under the pale moonlight, but Tayan's instincts told him otherwise. He had spent years learning to read the subtle signs of danger, the snapped twig, the shifted snow, the unnatural silence that fell too quickly. Emily noticed the tension in his shoulders and the way his eyes never stopped scanning. "Is something wrong?" she asked softly, gripping his arm. Tayan shook his head slightly. "I'm not sure. But we're not alone." Emily's heart skipped a beat, but she forced herself to stay calm. She had grown stronger over the last days, braving the storm, the forest, and now she had to trust herself and him once more. "Then we stay together," she said firmly. "Whatever it is, we face it as one." Hours passed in silence, the fire crackling softly between them, the shadows from the trees stretching long and thin. Then came the sound, muffled footsteps, cautious but deliberate, moving through the underbrush. Tayan's hand went to his weapon instinctively, and he whispered, "Someone is following us." Emily's eyes widened. "Do you think it's the people chasing me?" Tayan nodded gravely. "It could be. We need to be ready." Together they extinguished their small fire and moved silently into the shadows of the trees. The footsteps grew louder, accompanied by low murmurs. Emily clutched Tayan's arm, feeling the reassuring warmth of his presence. Her fear was still there, but it was tempered by trust that they could survive anything together. A group of 3 men emerged into the clearing, their expressions harsh, their eyes cold. One stepped forward, recognizing Emily immediately. "Thought we lost you in the storm," he sneered. "You don't get to run from us." Tayan stepped protectively in front of her. "Leave her alone," he said firmly, his voice calm but carrying a weight of authority that made the men hesitate. Emily felt her heart pounding, but Tayan's steady gaze and unwavering stance gave her courage. She realized that love wasn't just about tenderness. It was about fighting for each other, standing together when the world threatened to tear them apart. One of the men lunged forward, but Tayan was quicker, intercepting him with precise, controlled movements. Emily watched in awe as Tayan's skill and calmness dominated the encounter. She wanted to help, but he shook his head, signaling her to stay back. Still, she felt empowered by the trust between them, knowing that she had someone who would never let her face danger alone. The scuffle was over quickly. The men retreated, realizing they could not overcome Tayan's strength and determination, nor the unspoken bond that made him fight with a ferocity born of love. Emily ran into Tayan's arms, holding him tightly. "I was so scared," she admitted, her voice shaking. Tayan stroked her hair gently. "I know, but we're together. That's all that matters." For the first time since leaving Martha's cabin, they allowed themselves to breathe, letting the adrenaline fade. Emily's hand brushed against Tayan's, their fingers interlacing naturally. The danger had reminded them both of the fragility of life, but also of the resilience of love forged through trial. As they continued their journey through the night, Emily glanced at Tayan. "I've never felt this safe with anyone before," she said, "and you never will again." Tayan replied softly, his gaze steady and unwavering. "Because we face everything together, now and always." The moon rose higher, illuminating the path ahead. Each step forward was not just a step through the forest, but a step deeper into a shared life, one strengthened by storm, snow, and the fight for survival. In each other, they had found not only love but the courage to face whatever the world might throw their way, and they would do it side by side. Unbreakable. The first light of dawn filtered through the trees, painting the forest floor with soft golden streaks. Tayan and Emily had traveled through the night, their steps cautious but steady, hearts still racing from the encounter with the men who had pursued Emily. Now, with the threat behind them and the sky brightening, the world felt more forgiving, almost as if it too was welcoming them after their trials. They emerged from the dense woods into a wide meadow where the snow had begun to melt, revealing the tender green shoots of early spring. Emily took a deep breath, letting the crisp air fill her lungs. "We made it," she whispered, almost in disbelief. Her hand found Tayan's, and he squeezed it gently. "Yes," he said, voice low but steady. "We made it, and we'll continue to make it together." They stopped near a small stream where the water ran clear and cold. Tayan knelt, cupping some water to drink, while Emily watched him, her heart swelling with a mixture of relief and affection. For the first time since their flight from the snowstorm, she allowed herself to feel entirely safe, entirely present in the moment. The trials they had faced, the storm, the forest, the pursuers had strengthened their bond, forging a trust that went beyond words. Sitting side by side on a rock, Emily rested her head on Tayan's shoulder. "I can't believe how much has changed in just a few days," she said softly. "I went from running for my life to this, to feeling safe, cared for, and loved." Tayan's hand brushed a strand of hair from her face, tucking it behind her ear. "Love doesn't come easily," he said. "It comes through trials. It comes when you trust someone with your life and your heart. You've trusted me, Emily, and I've trusted you. That's why this feels unbreakable." She turned to him, eyes shining, and for the first time allowed herself to smile fully, without fear. "I never thought I'd find someone like you," she admitted. "Someone who can protect me, guide me, and love me completely." Tayan lifted her chin gently, their foreheads touching. "And I never thought I'd find someone worth fighting for like you," he said, his voice steady but tender. "Someone who can face storms and wolves and still trust me. That's why I'll always fight to keep you safe." For a long while, they simply sat together, the soft rush of the stream blending with the rustle of new leaves in the wind. No words were needed. The silence itself was full of understanding and unspoken promises. Emily felt the warmth of his presence seep into her soul, and Tayan felt the steady beat of her heart against his chest, grounding him in a way nothing else could. Eventually, they rose, ready to continue their journey. The meadow stretched out ahead, a path free from immediate danger but still demanding vigilance. Yet neither hesitated. Their steps were confident, synchronized, and full of purpose, moving forward not just through the landscape, but through the next chapter of their lives together. As they walked, Emily glanced back toward the forest where their night of danger had ended. She thought of Martha's cabin, the refuge that had given them the chance to know each other, to recognize the love that had been quietly growing. A smile crossed her face. "I'll never forget her," she said softly. "She gave us more than shelter, she gave us hope." Tayan nodded. "And hope is what carries us forward," he said. "No matter what lies ahead, we have each other, and that is stronger than any storm, any forest, any threat." Hand in hand, they moved forward into the morning light, leaving behind the remnants of fear and uncertainty. The world was vast and unpredictable, but their love, forged in the snowstorm and strengthened by every trial, was steady, enduring, and unshakable. And as long as they had each other, they knew they could face whatever challenges awaited together, fearless, and bound by the fire that had first ignited in Martha's cabin. By midday, the meadow opened onto a winding dirt path leading toward a small village nestled in the valley below. Smoke curled from chimneys, and the faint sounds of live chickens clucking, children laughing, and the creak of carts on cobblestones carried through the crisp air. Tayan slowed his pace, allowing Emily to take in the sight. After days of snow, ice, and relentless travel, the village seemed like a sanctuary, a place where the world could finally feel gentle. "I can't remember the last time I saw people who weren't fleeing or hunting," Emily said, her voice tinged with awe. "It feels peaceful here." Tayan nodded, his eyes scanning the village for signs of danger, but also for a safe place for them to rest. "It is," he agreed. "And we need a place to recover, to regain strength before continuing." They entered the village cautiously, their appearance drawing curious glances. Emily's pale cheeks were still flushed from the cold, and Tayan's dark features stood out among the villagers. Yet no one approached aggressively. Instead, a kind-faced woman stepped forward, her apron dusted with flour. "Travelers?" she asked. "You look like you've come through a storm," Emily smiled, a bit shyly. "We have," she admitted. "We're hoping for a place to rest for the night." The woman's eyes softened. "Come with me. We have rooms and hot meals. You'll be safe here." Tayan and Emily exchanged a quiet glance, relief evident in both their expressions. They followed the woman to a small inn at the edge of the village, the warmth and welcoming atmosphere a sharp contrast to the harsh wilderness they had endured. Inside, a fire blazed in the hearth, and the smell of baking bread filled the air. As they settled into a modest room, Emily sank onto the bed, exhaustion washing over her. "I can't believe how far we've come," she murmured. "From the snowstorm to here. It feels unreal." Tayan knelt beside her, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "We've come far," he agreed softly. "And we'll go further, but not alone. We face everything together." Emily looked into his eyes, the bond between them stronger than ever. "I never imagined love could feel like this," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. So steady, so real. Tayan took her hands in his. It's real because it's earned, he said. Through every storm, every danger, every moment we could have lost each other, we held on. That's why it matters. It's ours, forged in hardship and trust. They spent the evening by the hearth in the inn, sharing stories with the villagers and laughing quietly at small things, their connection deepening with each passing hour. Emily marveled at how natural it felt to lean on Tayan, to share her thoughts and fears without hesitation. And Tayan, in turn, felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that he had found someone who matched his courage, his spirit, and his heart. Later, as the village settled into the calm of night, Tayan and Emily stepped outside. The stars were bright and clear, reflected on the thin layer of frost still clinging to the ground. Emily rested her head against Tayan's shoulder. It feels safe here, she whispered. Tayan wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. It is, he said. But safety isn't just a place, it's us, together. Wherever we are, that's enough. For the first time since the snowstorm began, Emily allowed herself to fully relax, trusting that love, courage, and the bond they had forged would carry them through whatever challenges lay ahead. And as they gazed at the night sky, hand in hand they realized that the world, with all its trials, had led them here to each other, to safety, and to the first quiet moments of peace they had truly known. The village stirred early the next morning with sounds of clanging pots, rooster crows, and the chatter of neighbors preparing for a small seasonal festival. Tayan and Emily, still adjusting to the warmth and safety of their new surroundings, watched from the edge of the main square. Banners of woven cloth fluttered in the gentle breeze, and tables were set with fruits, breads, and steaming dishes. Emily's eyes sparkled with curiosity. I've never seen anything like this, she whispered. It's joyful, alive. Tayan nodded, his expression softening as he observed the villagers. It's good for us to be here, he said. It reminds us that life isn't only about survival. There's beauty too. The festival was small but lively. Children ran between the tables, laughing, while villagers danced to the rhythm of a fiddle and drum. Emily's face lit up at the sight, and she tugged on Tayan's hand. Come on, she said. Let's join them. At first, Tayan hesitated, unused to the carefree atmosphere, but Emily's excitement was infectious. Slowly, he followed her into the circle, moving with her to the music. Laughter spilled from Emily, and for a moment, Tayan allowed himself to forget the dangers they had faced, the storm, and the pursuers. They were simply two people, together, enjoying life. As the afternoon sun rose higher, the festival included a local custom, a symbolic bonding ceremony where couples exchanged small tokens to honor their commitment to one another. Emily looked up at Tayan, her eyes shining with anticipation. Do you want to do this? She asked quietly. Tayan studied her, feeling a wave of emotion. The trials of the past days had tested their courage, trust, and devotion. Now, here in the warmth of the village and the embrace of its traditions, he realized the significance of the moment. Yes, he said firmly. I want to honor what we have here, where life feels alive again. The village elder, a kindly woman with silver hair, approached and handed them two small tokens, woven bracelets with colorful threads. She explained that giving the bracelet to one another symbolized loyalty, trust, and love. Emily took a deep breath and carefully placed the bracelet on Tayan's wrist. His hand followed, sliding the bracelet over hers, his touch gentle but deliberate. For a long moment, they stood in silence, the festival continuing around them, but the world seemed to narrow to just the two of them. Emily's voice trembled slightly as she whispered, I've never felt safer, or more certain of anything in my life. Tayan smiled, his eyes glistening. I feel the same, he said. Whatever challenges come next, we face them together. This, us, it's stronger than any storm, any pursuit, any fear." The villagers cheered softly, sensing the sincerity of the couple's gesture. Emily laughed, a sound full of relief and joy, and Tayan joined her, their hands still entwined. For the first time in days, perhaps weeks, they felt truly unburdened, bound not by fear, but by mutual respect, trust, and a love that had survived the harshest tests. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting golden light across the festival, Emily leaned against Tayan. "I think we finally found a place where we can breathe," she murmured. Tayan rested his forehead against hers. "And a place where we can build our life together," he said softly. The festival continued around them, but Tayan and Emily were in their own world now, hearts steady, hands joined, and spirits strengthened. The snowstorm, the forest, the dangers they had passed. What remained was love, resilience, and a newfound sense of belonging. And in that moment, surrounded by warmth and laughter, they knew that no matter what came next, they had each other, and that was more than enough. The following morning, Tayan and Emily awoke to a bright but brisk day. Their hearts were still light from the village festival, yet Tayan sensed the subtle tension in the air. The forest surrounding the village was quiet, almost too quiet. He had learned to read the silence. It often signaled that danger lingered nearby. "Do you feel that?" he asked softly, his eyes scanning the tree line beyond the village. Emily nodded, a flicker of concern crossing her face. "I think someone's watching us." Tayan's hand found hers instinctively, fingers intertwining. "Then we stay close," he said. "Whatever comes, we face it together." Their instincts proved correct. Soon, a group of strangers appeared at the edge of the village, a small band of mounted men, armed and wary. Tayan's jaw tightened. Emily followed his gaze, recognizing the intent in their posture. These were no villagers, no casual travelers. Someone had tracked them here. Emily's hand squeezed his. "Are they looking for me?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Tayan nodded. "Possibly. But we are ready." He stepped forward slightly, shielding her behind him. His calm demeanor belied the tension in his body. He had faced dangers before, but now the stakes were personal, emotional, and more profound than ever. The strangers dismounted cautiously, and one of them stepped forward, raising a hand in warning. "We mean no harm if you comply," he said. "But you, woman, you are under pursuit. You will come with us." Emily's heart raced, but Tayan's presence anchored her. "We will not go anywhere with you," he said firmly, voice unwavering. "She is with me, and no one takes her without a fight." The leader's eyes narrowed. "You cannot stop us all." Tayan's gaze softened as he turned slightly toward Emily. "Stay behind me," he whispered. She nodded, heart pounding but trusting him completely. Together, they moved toward the edge of the village, Tayan's stance protective, his movements precise. The confrontation was tense. Emily observed Tayan's skillful defense, the fluidity and control in his actions. He disarmed one attacker, deflected another, and kept Emily safe in the center of the chaos. And through it all, she realized something profound. This love was not fragile. It was fierce, resilient, and unwavering. She felt her courage rise alongside his, willing herself to remain calm, steady, and trusting. After several minutes, the strangers, recognizing Tayan's strength and the bond that radiated between him and Emily, hesitated. Slowly they withdrew, leaving the couple standing together, breathless but unscathed. Emily exhaled, relief flooding her chest. Tayan pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. "You see?" he murmured. "We can face anything together." Emily rested her forehead against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. "I do," she whispered. "I know that now. Nothing, no danger, no fear can come between us if we stay like this. They walked back toward the village, hand in hand, the trials of the morning solidifying their bond even further. The festival, the cabin, the storm, the forest, they were all part of the journey that had forged their love, but this challenge had tested it in a new, urgent way. Emily understood now that love was not just tenderness or warmth. It was courage, trust, and the willingness to fight for one another when everything else threatened to tear them apart. By midday, they reached the village square, sunlight glinting off the rooftops. Emily looked up at Tayan and smiled, the first true, unreserved smile in days. "I feel stronger with you," she said softly. "And I with you," he replied. "Whatever comes next, we will face it together." The village seemed safer now, their bond stronger. Yet somewhere in the back of their minds, they knew this was only a prelude, a final moment before life allowed them a true sense of peace. The horizon stretched wide and promising, and they were ready to meet it, side by side, hearts entwined. The village had settled into the quiet calm of evening. Lanterns flickered along cobblestone streets, casting a soft glow across the rooftops, and the aroma of fresh bread and roasted meats lingered in the air. Tayan and Emily sat outside their small rented room, hands intertwined, watching the last of the festival lights twinkle in the distance. Their hearts were full not just from the joy of the celebration, but from the journey that had brought them here. They spoke little, letting the silence carry the weight of their experiences. Each glance, each subtle touch, spoke louder than words ever could. Emily rested her head against Tayan's shoulder, and he pressed a gentle kiss to her hair. "Do you ever think about that night in Martha's cabin?" she asked softly. Tayan smiled faintly, eyes reflecting the flickering lanterns. "Every day. It's where everything began, not just our survival, but us." He paused. "I knew then that whatever came next, we would face it together." Emily's eyes glistened with quiet emotion. "I was so scared back then. I didn't know if I would make it through the storm, or through everything that followed. But you never let me feel alone, and you never let me feel hopeless," Tayan replied. "We lifted each other through it all. That's what makes this love strong. Not just the moments of peace, but the moments of danger, fear, and uncertainty." As the night deepened, a soft breeze carried the faint sounds of the forest beyond the village. The memory of wolves in the dark and the frozen streams felt distant now, like shadows of another life. Yet they had shaped them, bonded them, and proven the depth of their commitment. Emily lifted her head to look at him, her expression radiant with trust and love. "I want this life," she said simply. "With you, wherever it leads." Tayan held her gaze, his thumb brushing across the back of her hand. "And I want it too. With you, I'm not afraid of storms, forests, or the world. I only fear losing us." They sat together for a long while, letting the cool night air mix with the warmth of their closeness. Every trial, every harrowing step they had taken, had led them to this moment of peace, of certainty. They had discovered that love was not just an emotion, it was a choice, a constant act of protection, trust, and vulnerability. And they had chosen it together over and over until it became unshakable. In the distance, the village church bell tolled softly, marking the passage of time. Emily and Tayan stood, walking hand in hand toward the modest inn that would be their home for the next few days. The path ahead was no longer defined by fear, snowstorms, or pursuers. It was defined by hope, trust, and the life they would build together. As they entered the inn, Tayan paused and looked down at Emily. "Whatever happens next," he said, voice low but firm, "we face it side by side, always." Emily smiled, resting her forehead against his. "Always," she echoed. Outside, the stars shone brightly, the world calm and endless, full of possibility. Inside, two hearts beat in harmony, strengthened by adversity, and bound by love that had weathered storms, wild forests, and human threats alike. Martha's cabin had been the beginning, the spark that set everything in motion. Now, the journey ahead was theirs to share freely, with courage, tenderness, and unwavering devotion. And as the night wrapped the village in quiet serenity, Tayan and Emily knew, without doubt, that no matter what storms the future might bring, they would face them together, and love would guide their way steadfast, enduring, and unbreakable.